What is up, YouTube? Alright, today I want to do a little bit of discussion on painting, painting your furniture, kitchen cabinets, um, whatever you may have. I myself do a lot of furniture builds. I do a lot of cabinets, a lot of cabinet refacing. I do have a Fuji Semipro 2, which it does the job. Like to have a little bit nicer one, but I'm just a humble man trying to make a living. Fuji, if you're so inclined to send out one of those mighty mites, I'd work it and I'd promote you guys for it. So it does a great job. Don't get me wrong. 2-stage turbine, it suffice. Hopefully someday I can have something a little bit bigger. I do like that it's all self-contained. I don't want to have to drag my air hose in from my air compressor and have a 60 or 80 gallon air compressor out there, another 220 breaker, the dryers, the inline filters, all that stuff. That self-contained system is the way to go. In my opinion, I like having it self-contained. I don't do enough painting to justify having anything larger and bigger. But the reasoning behind this video is with this Fuji Semipro 2, there's a lot of videos on YouTube, people demonstrating them, showing them off, what they can do. I have always sprayed either Sherwin-Williams urethane enamels, the Emerald series, or Benjamin Moore Advance. Both are great products. I've never really had any complaints with the finish on either of them. The biggest issue I had was the dry times. I mean, these things, it's 4 hours before you can even lightly touch it. A lot of times 12 to 16 hours before you can even recoat these things. And if you're just trying to spray one side at a time and let that side dry, you flip it. If you don't have it supported on some kind of a pinpoint rack, you'll get lines in your paint even after 24 hours. It was taking a lot of time for me to be able to paint these doors and furnitures, whatever I've been painting. So I started looking around, following a couple guys on Instagram, seeing what everybody else is using. And the one thing that kept popping up over and over and over was the Centurion Wood Coatings products. They have several different lines of products depending on what you want to use them for. The one that I was zeroing in on that seemed to fit my mold the best was the 2800 series. And this is a 2K polyurethane primer and paint. So, you got your primer, your top coat. This stuff can be tinted, as far as I'm aware of, any color you really want. This particular job I'm working on right now had Dove White, which they tinted the top coat to Dove White. It's kind of like an off-white color. I'll show you here in a bit. The primer, I will tell you this. I bought it, and less than 24 hours later, I opened it up to use it. At the store, they shook it up in the paint shaker. I really didn't think much of it, being less than 24 hours, I figured it was still pretty well shook up. So I opened up the can of primer, strained it into my paint gun, started spraying it. It's getting a lot of orange peel look, which to me usually tells me it's just not atomizing properly. It's kind of spattering out of the gun, so I figured it needed to be a little bit thinner. The second coat, I thinned it down with 10% water. They do recommend 10 to 15% water dilution if you need to dilute it. That laid down a little bit better, but it was still a little too chunky for what I think it should be. I did read on a website where they recommended a 2.0 tip. The Semipro 2 comes with a 1.3 from the factory, so I did buy a 2.0 tip, which I was running, and I didn't care for it. So once I got the backs of all these things sprayed, I did notice, even though it looked like it was kind of chunky, it did level itself out. So in the long run, it did what it was supposed to do. When I flipped these doors over to do the front side, I switched back to my 1.3 tip, diluted the primer down a little bit more than probably 10%. It was probably closer to 25%. And I did notice, this is why I was talking about the shaking at the store, about an inch in the bottom of the can when I stuck the paint stick down in there to stir it up. There was a lot of resins and, you know, whatever it is they mix paint with. There was a lot of it at the bottom of the can. I mean, I really was digging into the bottom of that can and pulling up just chunks of, you know, the product. So I got out my paint paddle that goes in your drill and stirred the heck out of it and got it mixed up really well with that dilution of water, the 1.3 tip. It sprayed pretty well. I do think it probably could have went on a little bit thicker, which is probably where that 2.0 tip would come in. But it did the trick, it leveled out, so it looked pretty good. After I got the prime coat on, I did notice I had a lot of tannins bleed through the prime coat, which I thought, okay, I could do a second prime coat, but I'll just go straight to the top coat and see what it does. Again, this is my first time using their product. Very excited to use it, so I just, you know, it's trial and error at this point. I will say that the primer, this CW1107, sands so nicely. It just powders right off as you sand it. I took my little, I don't know, I think it's a 3" by 3" 3" by 4" square, just a Black & Decker sander, and just lightly went over the rails and stiles and the center panels. It was just like powder, like baby powder, just sanded right off, smooth as could be. Couldn't ask for a better sand. I then switched over to my top coat, pulled it out, did check the bottom of the can. The top coat doesn't seem to have as much of that resin or poly in it, whatever it was, so there wasn't nothing on the bottom of it. I did go ahead and stir it up to make sure it was good and mixed. Diluted it down by about 10%, kept with my 1.3 tip, and laid my first coat on. It went down pretty smooth, pretty easy. Again, I don't know if that 2.0 tip would allow me to get a thicker layer, but you know, I was sticking with what I knew worked for now. I might try the 2.0 tip on a future job, but I did my first coat on the fronts and backs of these doors, and let me tell you, I got 37 doors and drawer fronts, so it's probably 45 minutes to an hour of spraying these things. And by the time I put that last door on the drying rack, the first one I sprayed was already dry. And I'm not talking just dry to the touch. I'm talking you could smash your thumb into it, you could rub your hand across it. It was dry. I was blown away. That dry time is huge. That's money in hand right there. So literally by the time I did the last one, I was able to grab that first one and start doing a second coat. I did notice that some of the tannins still was showing through that first coat of top coat, just slightly, probably about 15% of it was showing through. So I put my second top coat on, and that seemed to cover it all up. May do a third coat, not sure. The second coat seems like it's doing really well. I did not have to sand after the first top coat. I haven't had to sand after the second top coat. This stuff just lays down like melted butter. I mean, the finish on this stuff, if you guys could feel this through the camera, you would be amazed. I mean, it is just as smooth and slick as could be. Don't come after me in the comments about these doors. I didn't build them. I just paint them. But I mean, the finish on this is just, it's definitely nothing like the emerald and the advanced that I've been spraying for the last few years. I mean, it's just velvet. On their website it says it leaves a velvet finish, and they're not lying. It is as smooth as could be. Highly recommend it. It will be my paint of the shop for all my future work. The ability to tint it to whatever color I need. It's an endless color option where as long as you're spraying in your shop or wherever you spray at. I don't know that it's brushable or rollable. I don't believe it is. Some of y'all might know better than that. If you could, if you know and you leave a comment, that'd be great. I spray everything. So that may be the one hiccup I have with this stuff is when I'm doing a cabinet reface, if I have to repaint the boxes and I'm spraying the doors in my shop, I could get the emerald enamel or the advance and hand brush the cabinetry, roll it, brush it. I'm not the guy who's going into a customer's house and setting up a Dexter crime scene with plastic to be able to go in there and spray cabinets. I will hand roll them out, brush them, and not have to worry about all that stuff. So I guess maybe you could set up, a can of advance and do the cabinets and then spray the Centurion on your doors and drawer fronts. As long as it's the same color, I don't see why it should be a big issue. But again, this stuff is amazing. If you are in that emerald enamel or the alkyd, been more advanced, if you're in that camp and you've been on the fence about looking for different stuff because of dry times, check them out. I got mine through my local paint dealer. I believe they're a Pittsburgh paint affiliate. They carry all the Centurion stuff. They did recommend and sell me a quart of their water-based urethane catalyst hardener. What I was told was half of this jug, which would be 16 ounces, is enough to catalyze an entire gallon of either the primer or the Topcoat. You can catalyze both. They said it has a 3-hour pot life when you mix it. And again, what I was told is that the hardener, the only thing it affects is the actual hardness of the paint once it's cured. They highly recommended it for tables, desks, like you say, cabinet doors, either or. But yeah, again, once you mix it, you got 3 hours worth of life to use with it. I didn't use it on these cabinet doors, with this being my first use of Centurion. I just didn't want to mix it and waste a bunch of it or let it sit in my gun, then it hardens in my gun and I'm sitting there struggling trying to clean that thing out. So I do have a desk job coming up that's getting painted white. I will utilize the hardener at that point and see what I think about that from there. But it's I'm sold. I mean, I'm just, this one job blew me away. I like it. Again, if you've been on the fence wanting to try something, I'd recommend it. Centurion Wood Coatings. They're good stuff.